a host of geopolitical issues. We're going to cover a laundry list of news with George Noory. Webster Tarpley, incredible mind, a doctor of history. He's also has a degree in economics. In fact, do I have Tarpley's bio? I never really read that. He's like top of his class, scholar, and just an amazing mind. The Obama deception seen more than 40 million times, free online. We made it 4 years ago, basically, about almost 3 years and 3/4, so close to 4 years. And it's all come true exactly as Tarpley said. It was like he has a crystal ball. He's joining us now to break down what's happening. We had Greg Palast on earlier. He's got a big article in The Nation out. Mitt Romney's bailout bonanza. And they estimate he got upwards of $100 million off of GM stuff, holding engine parts hostage in a blind trust, they claim. I mean, and I'm not going after Romney or Obama. They're both puppets. My only point is this is all crazy. So I don't even know what Tarpley's going to bring up. I've had so much going on. Whatever it is, I'm sure it's going to be informative. I want his take on the proxy war against the Russians in Syria, where they now in the New York Times on Monday admit we're funding al-Qaeda, or our government is, giving them weapons. The 3 aircraft carriers now massing, the first time cutting off press TV in Europe. All this other saber rattling, they didn't cut off the Iranian state-funded run news agency that, by the way, Tarpley appears on. They ask me to come on all the time. I go on Japanese, you name it, French TV. But I can never go on any of these shows. I'm too busy now. But I know Tarpley even sometimes goes on there and talks. I've been on there before. I've been on RT. I've been on BBC. I've been on it all. But they're shutting that down. In fact, here's Press TV on it. Ban on Iranian channels exposes EU duplicity towards Iran. Obama signed an executive order saying if you're against even attacking Iran, we're going to take your bank account now. So they're trying to bring in the Sedition Act. In 1 week until U.S. has 3 aircraft carriers facing Iran. That's Infowars.com. Iran launched submarine destroyer into Gulf during U.S. naval exercises. Largest U.S.-Israel missile defense drill kickoff. Russia S-400s relocate near Turkey. Hezbollah shifts units, rockets into Syria. That's Debka file. I mean, it is absolute wildness. Commander, if Iran attacked, Israel will be hit. AP. Tarpley, what do you want to get into? The economy or Iran first, or the election? I mean, this is just bedlam. The world financial meltdown. Stiglitz says Europe's into depression, worldwide depression coming. Jobless numbers down again after the fake numbers. I mean, it's all accelerating. Tarpley, what do you say?
Let's talk about the October surprise. Let's talk about the CIA, Mormon Mafia, and their plans for an October surprise to put Romney into the White House. Now, the first topic I'd like to talk about is Benghazi and what that shows us about what's actually happening behind the scenes in the intelligence community, not this talking points, Democrats, Republicans, Obama, Romney. Then I'd like to go on to say a few words about a very important meeting in New York City on October 27th. If you're sick of Obama, sick of Romney, sick of both parties, sick of all the...
you have the floor, Dr. Tarpley of Tarpley.net.
And that's on October 27th, New York City. It's in Tribeca, below Canal Street. The INN World Report Auditorium from noon to 6. And that will be the United Front against austerity. But let me talk, first of all, about Benghazi, because I think this is very interesting to show how the intelligence community is working, in the sense that the ruling elite wants Romney in the White House. The Bilderberg Group, I believe, made a decision in favor of Romney after he came to their meeting. You can see the Federal Reserve, the money from Wall Street. All of this is signaling that they want Romney. So how do they do it? Well, we've had one October surprise already, except we had it in September, and that was Benghazi. Now, there are two sides to this. One is the so-called film. The other is the killing. But these are both important, and they go together. Now, the film is not the killing, and I'm not claiming that at all. But what I'm saying is there was this film, and the Islamophobic film was the subject of demonstrations in 25 countries around the world, in Cairo, in Pakistan, in countries in Europe, all over the Arab world, North Africa, you name it. This was about the film. So what's with the film? The film came out of a little studio in California, and we're asked, first of all, to believe that a guy called Sam Basile created the film. Now, Sam Basile is a little nobody. He's a patsy. He's a drug ex-convict. He's probably a drug informer for the DEA or FBI or something like this. And he took the fall as the guy who created the movie. But if we look at who owns the studio and who signed for the permit and actually how the movie came about, we're led to somebody called Joseph Nasrallah, who is a Coptic Christian. He's the chief executive officer of Media for Christ, a Coptic Christian from Egypt. And it seems to me that's the guy who really made this movie come about. He's had some experience and he has a studio to make that work. Now, if we follow him a little bit, we're led into the midst of the infamous Islamophobia network. And the Islamophobia network, people, I think, are familiar with it. It's the group that organized a demonstration and a campaign back in September of 2010 in Ground Zero, right, in Lower Manhattan. They were the big ones campaigning that there should be no mosque and no Islamic community center. Now, Joseph Nasrallah addressed one of those demonstrations, right, that demonstration on September 11th, 2010. This is the network that many associate with Pamela Geller, who's very vocal and very strident, and she's all over the internet. But let me just point you, Nasrallah at that demonstration was on the program with John Bolton. Now, John Bolton is a top neocon. John Bolton is the Romney campaign. We know that Romney is surrounded by these warlike, angry neocons. We have Kagan, we have Dan Senior, we have John Bolton, we have Elliot Cohen, we have Robert Joseph, the guy who put the words in about the Niger yellow cake into the Bush State of the Union address. So there's a whole angry Islamophobic neocon faction. They want to make a comeback. They want to vindicate themselves. They're still humiliated, smarting from the fact that their man Bush was, leaving office with a 22% popularity, the lowest in modern times. They want to come back and vindicate themselves. And since they're neocons, they know only one way to do that, and that is by war. They say we'll have a new successful war of aggression to make people forget about the old war of aggression. They have attached themselves to Romney. I would say if Romney wins the election, there will be U.S. military intervention in Syria by February, March, maybe when the springtime comes and the campaigning season gets better. But when you're dealing with that film, you can see all the Republicans say, no, the film doesn't matter, the film doesn't matter. Well, might they say it, the Romney campaign is heavily implicated in the film. In shorthand on Twitter, we might write, the Romney campaign created the Islamophobic film that started the ball rolling all over the place. Now, when you're planning an operation like this, you need the film to create the atmosphere, right, so that people all around the world can understand what's going on. But now let's switch to the specific operation to kill Ambassador Stevens. Now, unfortunately, Ambassador Stevens was heavily in contact with the terrorist elements, the Salafists, the Wahhabites. In Libya, it's called the Senussi Brotherhood, in that terror corridor, right? Benghazi, Derna, Tobruk. And Derna, of course, is the city that has given more suicide bombers per capita than any other city in the world. He was basically there. He had been there as vice consul before. He was dealing with them in 2008, 2009. And I'm afraid part of his mission was to send these people from Libya to Turkey and then on to Syria, where they are the heart and soul of the rebellion against President Assad. It's precisely terrorist fighters of this type. So I'm afraid that's what he was doing. It's interesting that the last meeting that Ambassador Stevens had, 8:30 in the evening on September 11th local time, he was meeting with a Turkish diplomat. Why would the U.S. ambassador to Libya be meeting with a Turkish diplomat in Benghazi, Libya? Well, if you put together what we know, it's probably the next phase of that airlift and sea lift of those fighters, those terrorists, the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group and people like that, from Libya to Turkey and then across the border into Syria. So there was every reason for Ambassador Stevens in the State Department to think that there was no threat to him because he was on such friendly terms with so many of these militia elements, right, these jihadis. Now, if we want to ask who killed Ambassador Stevens, the answer to that, according to leaks that have been in various British papers and also in the U.S., it is a guy called Kumu. You can look it up. QUMU or KUMU. Sufyan Kumu. And his group is now called Ansar al-Sharia. They seem to be the ones who sent a well-armed team with mortars and rocket grenades and all the rest to come and kill the U.S. ambassador. Now, Kumu was in Guantanamo Bay for 4 years. He's an alumnus of Guantanamo. I think he's a U.S. double agent, and I think that's pretty much a prima facie case.
Okay, well, that's what, just to interject here, that's basically what Steve Pieczenik says, and this is almost a replay of when you were on right after this happened, which is fine, but our listeners know you said that.
There's more to add. Let me just continue. Kumu is a U.S. double agent, right? The way you get out of Guantanamo is by becoming a double agent for the rest of your life. Now, that's the attack. Now what's new from this past week is the defense. Now, last Wednesday, there was a hearing of the Issa Committee, Darrell Issa, California, supposedly the richest guy in the Congress. And this was addressed by a bunch of people from the State Department, although he had a guy, the leadoff witness, who was from the Utah National Guard. Well, if he's from the Utah National Guard, I guess we can have some idea where he stands vis-a-vis Romney, right, given the Mormon domination of the state. But that's not part of the argument. What we had then was a State Department official showing a map of the U.S. facilities in Benghazi from above. And from above, she said, oh, and there were these buildings here. At a certain point, Congressman Jason Chaffetz, lo and behold, another Utah Mormon congressman, goes absolutely berserk. And he starts yelling, point of order, point of order, point of order. You can't show that picture. Take that picture down. It turned out that Chaffetz had been to Benghazi for less than 1 day, came back an expert, but he said that he had been instructed by everybody on the scene in Benghazi, never, never, never show that picture. And the State Department official said, look, this is from Google. You can get this commercially. This is not classified in the least. And it turned out, as Dana Milbank and others reported in the Washington Post and elsewhere, that what Chaffetz was freaking out about was that there was a special CIA base at the consulate. And the consulate was supposed to be guarded by a 12-man or 12-person CIA rapid response team that would have made a very important difference in the relation of forces. I hope you agree. And they had apparently gone AWOL. And as Dana Milbank wrote in the Washington Post last Thursday, it looks like that the CIA was the organ that was letting Ambassador Stevens down. So there's one layer of security. A CIA team that was there but didn't intervene, and now the CIA is trying to cover up that they exist in the first place. Now there's another element. One of the backup layers of security is the so-called 17th of February Martyrs Brigade. And they actually had a barracks in the compound, just as the CIA did, pretty much. The 17th of February Martyrs Brigade had their barracks there, and they also ran away. They were nowhere to be found. Now, who's the 17th of February Martyrs Brigade? We got to go back so we can know them by their deeds. Last year in Libya, there was a struggle for power of the Libyan military. On the one side, you had this guy, Yunus. Yunus had been a general in the Gaddafi army. He had defected from Gaddafi in the springtime of last year, gone to Benghazi, and he'd been acclaimed as the new boss of the Libyan armed forces. Okay, so he was sort of the in-country candidate to be the dominant general. But the U.S. had sent in another guy called Khalifa Haftar, or Haftar, H-I-F-T-E-R usually, or H-A-F-T-E-R. And Haftar had written in a book in French that he'd published years ago that he had been on the CIA payroll. And to underline this fact, he'd been living in Virginia, not far from CIA headquarters here in Langley. He was sent back, and he was the CIA candidate to be the head of the Libyan military. All right. At a certain point, the 17th of February Martyrs Brigade intervenes to assassinate Yunus and a couple of his colonels. So in other words, Haftar takes over the military of Libya thanks to the 17th of February CIA Martyrs Brigade. Now, to sum this all up, we have a CIA asset who kills the American ambassador. We have a CIA 12-man team who do not intervene, and we have a Mormon congressman who's trying to cover it up. And then we have the 17th of February Martyrs Brigade, another CIA asset that also declines to intervene. Just one more piece of interesting evidence. The story that the whole thing was a demonstration gone violent, right? This is the whole Romney campaign now depends on refuting this story that the demonstration went violent. Well, you look on the Fox News website, and Fox News reports that 4 days after the event, a briefing was given to the House Intelligence Committee saying that, yes, it had been a demonstration gone violent. And the person giving that briefing was none other than General David Petraeus, the head of the CIA. So this thing has CIA written all over it. But now I would say, what CIA? What faction in the CIA that we know of, that we've been aware of for some time, has this existential interest in making sure that Romney gets into the White House? I say the prime suspects are the CIA Mormon mafia. Interestingly enough, last Friday, when Hillary Clinton showed up at CSIS to give her attempt to defend herself and her department.
That's the big defense contractor.
No, CSIS is a sort of a think tank on you know.
Oh, SEIC, excuse me. Yeah, you're right.
This is the old Georgetown Center for Strategic and
No, I know what it is. I've been on air a lot today. Go ahead.
Brzezinski. So she showed up there, right, to try to defend, because ultimately, if anybody's responsible, the cabinet officer, right? There's such a thing as ministerial responsibility. If you want to blame anybody, it's Hillary Clinton. But fine. So she goes there and gets introduced by none other than Brent Scowcroft, the Mormon former head of the National Security Council for Bush the Elder. Bush the Elder, by the way, who got us into this whole series of ruinous Middle East wars with the first Gulf War, right, back in the days of Saddam Hussein the first time around. So there is this CIA Mormon mafia, right? The young Mormons go overseas, they become missionaries, they learn a foreign language, they come back, they can put on the application, don't smoke, don't drink, don't womanize, straight arrow, clean living, and the royal road to promotions, especially when you've got an angel like Brent Scowcroft and others like him who are superintending this entire thing. So you look at all of the hot air and lies and disinformation that have been pervaded in this country about this incident, and all of this stuff that I'm telling you is absolutely in the public domain. It was an October surprise to Carterize Obama, right? Because they're working from the original Obama printout that he's the new Carter, and they want to make sure that he gets and stays the new Carter. So they want to Carterize him, and they did it with this incident, right? With the film and the killing. And look at all those coincidences, right? This is just, it's too much to be a coincidence. Some faction in the CIA clearly wanted this to happen, and now they've made it happen. And this is supposed to be, I think, the first step in trying to decide the presidential election. There may be another one, but what I'm trying to alert people to is, if you remember, Alex, when Obama was contending for the presidency, there was this process going on in the background whereby the Brzezinski faction was seizing control of pieces of the policy apparatus, right? They were taking over pieces of the executive branch, even as Obama marched towards the White House, right? There were things going on in the background. And I think that's what's happening right now. So people have got to wake up. Romney is the ruling class choice. They've used Obama. I think they've gotten what they think they can out of him. His usefulness has been outlived. He's a squeeze. Sure,
that's what I'm getting from all of our inside sources, that the system's sick of Obama, and Obama's up there, running around on the stage. But I mean, they're all puppets to begin with, and we covered this, 3-4 weeks ago, and it's great. It's very interesting. But in the 25 minutes we have left here, Webster, can we please get your take on the Iran-Syria situation, where that's going, the economy, all this?
Rather than the observer stuff, let me just, before we go to that, because I'll be happy to talk about that too. The other thing then is, if this is true, right? If you have Obama, which is a failure, right? It's a terrible failure.
He doesn't get Kolob.
But Kolob has his own faction, right? Kolob is worse, because the Kolob candidate comes in with this dedicated network inside the federal government that's going to do what he wants. And remember, the neocons will make a return in grand style. John Bolton, Secretary of State, based on being involved in this network that created that film, right, the Islamophobia film. Mike Levitt, the transition director, right, picking people even now in the background. The domestic and economic side will be this Mormon mafia on the domestic side. So nobody wants this. The Romney-Obama choice is a Hobson's choice, right? This is.
So do we want Obama and a bunch of bankers and commies, or do we want our precious?
Well, certainly the criminal energy, right? The real fury, the raving assault is on the side of Romney, because when the new administration comes in, this is always the case. The new administration comes in with a criminal energy that the old administration, right? Here we have Obama, the effete president, with an exhausted, worn-out administration. And then, of course, you've got to ask yourself, you're not picking candidates. You're trying to use the election to fight the ruling class that's behind the candidate.
I know. Listen, I understand you want to affect the election and you think Obama's better than Romney. And I know you went after Obama early on, saying what a horrible globalist he was. So I respect your educated view on all this. My only issue is it's deck chairs on the Titanic. They're admitting global depression now. What's happening with the dollar? Where do you see all that going, Webster? That's why I got you on.
Here's the point. October 27th in New York. In other words, for people that have been sick of Obama, sick of Romney, people who have been betrayed by Ron Paul, people who have been betrayed by Occupy Wall Street, and a dozen other contraptions that I could mention. Now's the chance to try to do something about it, right? To break out of this, constant, pendulum, Hegelian dialectic, whatever you want to call it, of oscillating back and forth between worse and the lesser evil and the greater evil and whatever it is. And the point of this is the economic crisis is not a future event. The economic crisis is now, and it's called 30 million unemployed to start with.
Sure. My point is it's worsening and coming to a horrible new valley.
Right, fine. But again, you have to look at the means that have been applied, right? Why is Greece at 25% unemployment?
No, I mean, they put them in with tax increases and austerity and cuts and benefits to implode the economy. That's the IMF plan.
Today, we have Obama is already planning for the lame duck session. They're all planning for the lame duck session. It really, again, this is quite independent of Obama-Romney, although each one of them would handle it in a stylistic.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They're all puppets, man. Come on.
Yes, obviously, but then what are you going to do about it? Is it enough to say they're all puppets and then our job is...
I don't think the public realizes how serious this is. I want to know personally where you see the economy going. I
see 50 million Americans whose lives are in danger right now, because those are the 50 million who have no job. They're beyond the 99, or in most states, they never even got 99.
They live on food stamps.
There is no, wait a minute, there's no welfare because Clinton destroyed welfare. I'm hearing reactionaries screaming about welfare. There is no welfare. It's gone. It was destroyed by Clinton in 1996 in order to get reelected. The reappearance of Clinton is really a harbinger of new betrayals, new attacks on the Social Security Act.
Well, I mean, here's the deal. Dependency doesn't work, but I understand that when you have bankers shutting down your society and offshoring your jobs for their own monopoly, that you have to feed people that you've taken their means to work away. I understand that. My point is the modern great society we've seen was to domesticate and was to socially engineer. We can argue all day, but I agree with you. When they pay farmers not to produce, when they shut us down, when they turn corn into ethanol, when they spend $22 billion to ship General Motors to China, I don't want to hear about a woman getting food stamps to feed her kids being the reason we have problems. I understand that these people will starve to death if they don't have that. I understand we are literally, when they pull the trigger on this, it'll take weeks to turn this country into a rioting wasteland.
Yes, and again, people are educated about Obama. I wrote 2 books. You've been distributing them, right? That's a wonderful thing. So people have some idea of Obama. In the case of Romney, they don't know. By the way, I have to urge people, go to progressivepress.com, and buy this book, right? Buy it as soon as you can. You can get it for as little as $6, and I think that's a no-brainer. But now we've got a gang of 12 in the Senate, and here's what they're saying: that the fiscal cliff is coming and the lame duck session, and it's time for the grand bargain. And the grand bargain is supposed to be to avoid the defense cuts by cutting the food stamp budget. Now, this is where we get into genocide.
No, I had Congressman Walter Jones on, a serious, conservative guy. He said we should end all these wars and take care of people. Obviously, you want to get the economy going, you take care of people. You don't keep the wars going, they're bleeding us dry.
Right. But of course, the problem is that neither party has any interest in doing this. The only way.
Well, where are the defense contractors going to get all their contracts if the country fully collapses?
The ruling class is incapable of thinking that far down the road. This is always the fast buck, the quick ripoff, and so forth. So it's impossible to make an appeal even to enlightened self-interest to these people, right? You can say, if you do this, the Chinese will eat you for lunch. They don't care. They can't fathom it.
They're like, I'll just move to China. They've got great investments. I'll move to Singapore.
Yeah, and Mitt Romney, certainly already has his.
He's already put his eggs in the Chinese basket.
But now, look, you take a couple of cases, right? And I would urge you to take up some of these issues, right? Benton Harbor, Michigan. Benton Harbor, Michigan, on the it's on the west side of the Mitten. Benton Harbor, Michigan is under dictatorship by the fascist governor of Michigan, Snyder. Right? He's put essentially a little dictator, a little Hitler, is running that city. And there are other cities in Detroit that are in the same way. We just had the Chicago teachers strike. They were sold out by Obama. We had the struggle in Wisconsin of the Wisconsin public employees trying to stop the fascist Governor Walker, who's, of course, a big friend of Paul Ryan, the John Birch Society freak who's Romney's running mate. The Chicago teachers strike was almost going to be joined by the Service Employees International Union. You almost had the kind of critical mass you would have needed for a statewide, Illinois, and maybe Midwest-wide general strike. This is what we have to start thinking about. The problem with all those struggles is they're too narrow. If it's union only, it won't work, right? It's got to be black community, unemployed, women, other elements. You've got to have something to say to the troops to get them on your side so they're not on the other side. In other words, the mass strike approach and a program. And generally speaking, in all of these struggles where you're fighting either to get a decent wages for a public union or to roll back layoffs, firings in the public sector, or you're trying to maintain a service like an education or something else, it's the Wall Street sales tax. And this is what Occupy Wall Street never fathomed. It's not enough to protest Wall Street. The key is to make Wall Street pay. Take it out of their hide. Make them pay. We have a depression. You're saying people finally realize it's a depression. It's been a depression for more than 4 years now. Who's going to pay for this depression? Romney and company say, yeah, you are. You working people. And the finance oligarchs are going to make out like bandits. There's got to be a way to say no to that, and it's a very simple thing. Wall Street sales tax. You pay sales tax on shoes. In some states, you even pay it on food at the grocery store. The Wall Street sales tax, 1% on quadrillions of turnover. A wealth tax is not going to do it. It's not enough wealth. And Glass-Steagall is a fine idea, but that's not a mass organizing demand. That's not a leading edge sort of mass traction, life or death kitchen table solution to this kind of stuff. So I urge people, turn away from both of them. Obama, I've said everything I can about Obama, 2 books. That's about it. And it's basically all in there. Nothing has been added, really, that I can see. And now Romney, it's the same story, except it's even more sinister. And then you've got this White Horse prophecy, right? You're asking about Russia, Iran, places like this. How can you have a president who comes from a so-called church where they were swearing a blood vendetta, a blood revenge oath against the United States into the late 1920s, meaning George Romney, presidential candidate, father of the current one, swore to exact blood revenge against the United States and against the American people for the way they treated Joseph Smith and Hiram Smith, that they didn't bow down, and then a mob came and killed them. And then on top of that, that's the oath of vengeance. Then we have the White Horse prophecy, where we've got this apocalyptic scenario that the Constitution hangs by a thread, the Mormons take over the United States, they go on and conquer the world, and the last battle is with Russia. And I take it that's behind this otherwise mystifying statement from Romney that Russia is the main strategic foe of the United States. If you want to get on that trade, people have forgotten Bush, right? Bush, they asked Bush, do you talk to your father? He said, no, but I talk to the higher father, right? Meaning his direct line to God. He told French President Chirac, I'm doing this to destroy the enemies of God's chosen people in the Middle East. This is insane stuff, but that's bad enough. Now what we have with Romney is a codified version, which is much more binding, and I think is more frightening than anything we had with Bush the Younger. So people have got to think about this. So what we're going to need is a line of defense. There's got to be a defense line sometime in November. There's got to be some kind of a rudimentary line of defense, class defense, right, on the basis of these sorts of economic demands, so that when the assault comes, at least we can put out a propaganda demand saying, tax Wall Street sales tax, make the bankers pay. And if you're not doing that, I mean, people that are not doing that, who think they're fighting Wall Street or the elite or the finance oligarchs or the 1% or the New World Order, it's not going to be adequate. In other words, people have to prepare.
Well, Webster, sure. I mean, I'm not fighting people that are 1%. I'm fighting the tiny elite who are anti-free market monopoly people who brag they want to shut down the middle class. That's the problem with the so-called general left. They just want little tiny things and don't understand the larger image, of what can bring true freedom and an empowerment, a new renaissance, a new enlightenment. And I mean, I just see two incredibly corrupt power structures that are all interconnected, and things running down. I mean, I don't see an even deeper.
But how about the survival needs of the American people? I'm telling you, there are 50 million people, no job, no unemployment benefits, they have no health care.
No, I got it. And they'll vote to take my guns and take my house and line me and my family up and shoot us in a ditch if it means they'll get an Obama phone.
And
so,
you've got, look, the other thing is unions, right? There's got to be some pre-organized element in this stuff. Now, Romney and Ron Paul and Rand Paul are all on the same line. Bust every union in the United States. Bust them all.
Let me just stop you, Webster, because I've had you going on and on. I just want to say something. I'm all for the unions that stood up against the Rockefellers 100 years ago, 60, 70 years ago. Now they're just mafia organizations that lobby to ship the jobs overseas and give their money to Handgun Control Inc. to try to take my guns. So, I mean, what do you say to the Obama phone lady who says, I got an Obama phone? In fact, we have the clip ready. I'm going to play this for you. What do you say to this lady? Here it is.
Obama.
You got Obama phone?
Yes, everybody in Cleveland, low minority, got Obama phone. Keep Obama in president, He gave us a phone.
He gave you a phone?
Do more.
How did he give you a phone?
You sign up if you on food stamps, you on Social Security, you got low income, you disability.
Hey, I have a question. Okay, what's wrong with Romney again?
Romney, he sucks.
Bad. So there you go. I mean, yeah.
What is that? The ghost of Breitbart? Is that the Republican National
So I'm not
Committee?
allowed to go see what people that have all they want is for welfare.
It's absolutely trivial. That's absurd. That's peanuts. It's chicken feed. It's nothing. You know how many Obama phones Jamie Dimon at J.P. Morgan Chase got? Pandit the Bandit is now quitting. You know how much he got from the federal government? It's in the trillions.
Hey, you're not listening, Webster. Listen. I had Greg Palast on today. All I've talked about is the trillions to foreign bankers and corporate welfare, and I just said it's wrong to demonize someone because they're getting food stamps when you've deindustrialized them by design because you don't want to have a complex, diverse market. As John D. Rockefeller said, competition is a sin. All I know is, and what I'm going to say is, the 100 million people on welfare of one form or not, also happen to think Mao Zedong's a great guy, because I've talked to him. They think Lenin's great. They think my guns are bad. They just buy whatever the disgusting udders of the New World Order spray into their mouths and disease their brains with. So I don't like the banksters. But I'm down here on the ground with people that would probably hang me up by my ankles and chop me up for barbecue if the New World Order told them it was liberal. You know, a bunch of abortion-loving, eugenics-loving, black genocide-loving, New World Order, fake liberal, limousine liberal trash who are also my enemy. But you understand? I don't like the neocons and all their... The whole ruling class is a bunch of rotting carcasses, and then they've got giant hordes of dumbed-down idiots following them.
So what's the basis to fight the ruling class?
I don't know.
You can turn on Larry Kudlow on CNBC every night, and he says, free market capitalism is the blah, 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 blah. Free market is their slogan. It's the slogan of John D.
But they only say that because they don't really follow it. They want monopolies.
There is no such thing. That's the other thing, is that the free market has not existed since the...
Hey, I don't get tax incentives in Travis County, but every globalist corporation pays zero tax. And I went down to the city and they said, they laughed at me because I'm an American scum.
Right. So there's, by the way, with the Mormons, you're a Gentile and a damned American too. So don't forget them. But what
does that even mean? I don't know. Well, what? A Mormon is a Gentile? What?
The Mormons consider everybody else, even including Jews, which is quite remarkable. The Mormons consider everybody else a Gentile, and you read their documents, you know, from the 19th century, from the founders, from Joseph Smith and Brigham Young.
Hey, I get the whole Mormon thing that you're using politically, but the Mormons today are not the Mormons of 100 years ago.
Look, I say this to your listeners. I warned about Obama. I think this turned out to be right. I used the same method to tell you that Romney is coming at you, and you better be ready. And I'm trying to warn people that this is going to be horrendous. And it's going to be beyond Obama because it's a different... Well,
that's scary. I hope you're, you know what? I hope you're wrong, buddy.
And the answer, I'm not saying, you know, support any lesser evil. I'm saying organize independently of the ruling class. Okay,
can I just have 5 minutes here at the end with you for my questions? I know you want solutions, and we've talked about those. I understand what you're saying. What is your real prognosis on the current course for the economy and Syria, Iran, the proxy wars? It looks like it's building towards a head.
Well, again, I would say the principal danger in the world economy is that we do have this depression, and the ruling class is determined to bring this sort of Greek or Spanish or British, because they are not too far behind, to bring that austerity to the United States. And if you want to do that, again, Romney is a more suitable vehicle than Obama, because Obama's got to worry about some of these constituency groups.
And they love austerity because everybody can be bought cheap then.
Because they are obsessed. They want to save all that money. Some of them want to use it directly for their own wealth. Others want to use it for bailouts and corporate welfare. Now, concerning Syria, this is always of some interest. Right now, the word on the ground in Syria is that the Syrian army is actually winning, that the Free Syrian Army, so-called, the killers, the people, a lot of them are Libyans who were brought from Benghazi over to Turkey and then into Syria. They've had heavy losses, and the Syrian army has been doing better and better against them. I think we've gotten to a point now where, at least in cities, the Free Syrian Army, the killers, death squads, cannot really hold on to anything in a city. They may be able to hold on to things in the countryside in northern Syria near the Syrian border, say north of Aleppo and in this Idlib area. They can do a few things there, but that's about all they can do. So now we've got the call had gone out, and this was actually right before Ambassador Stevens got killed. The call went out for a second wave of jihadis to be shipped in, and undoubtedly northern Libya was a key place for that to happen. So it's not clear to me what has happened with that particular echelon, right, that they wanted to send in. So the Syrian army is doing better, and there's, you know, you get freakouts going in the NATO circles. The Free Syrian Army has split into 3 groups, and they don't coordinate. There are 300 death squads, That was always true. But now the 300 death squads, instead of at least being under the nominal leadership of this guy, Major Assad, they're now going 3 different directions. One of them is a very obvious Saudi puppet, I would say, a Sunni sort of Wahhabite preacher. Now, where might this end? Well, on the one side, it looks to me like there is some perspective that the guerrillas, the killers, will be reduced to a sort of low to medium level guerrilla war. They've tried offensives, right? They had one offensive a little bit after the middle of
But now they're saying no-fly zones, boots on the ground, invasions.
This is, there's always a question, right? Suppose Obama thinks he's losing the election. You could also have, up to now, I've been talking about Romney's, the Romney network, pro-Romney network, and what they might do as an October surprise. It's also possible that Obama would carry out some kind of an October surprise, because when you get very close to the election, the effect that people have observed is the so-called rally round effect, that if it happens a month or two before the elections, there's plenty of time for the various attack machines to generate anti-Obama sentiment. But if it happens right before the election, the immediate sort of Pavlovian response of the American people is to support the president no matter who he is, right? To rally around the president. So that might be something in Obama's quiver when we get close to the elections. The other thing, though, is I think one perspective is that the Syrian army simply grinds down these death squads, and we may be getting to the point where there are not enough death squads left in the Middle East to keep this going, because the Syrian army...
So they may be running out and exhausting all the al-Qaeda jihadis that the West is funding. All right, Webster, tarpley.net, thank you.
The other thing is, if you get a revolution in Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, or Qatar, that would also tend to shut down what those people are doing through Turkey into Syria. Or Erdogan of Turkey may come to his senses and say, look, I've gone all the way out on the limb. Obama's been lying to me. The CIA has been lying to me. There is no perspective for overthrowing Assad in the short to medium run. I'm going to cool it. I'm going to butt out. I'm going to pull back.
They seem to be committed. Webster, we'll talk to you again very soon about this particular topic. Thank you so much. We're going to go to break here and play this special report on the UN Agenda 21 and how it mirrors the Chinese authoritarian system. Well, of course it does. The Rockefellers in the 70s made a deal, this has been declassified, for China to be the model. They're going to have you live in 250 square foot, Bloomberg's announced this, facilities, and you'll pay the property taxes for a mansion on them. This is their model while they live in giant mansions themselves.
Dykes here with a quick update from Infowars.com investigating the stealth implementation of the United Nations Agenda 21 right here in the United States under the name of Sustainable Communities. So why is this important? To oppose Agenda 21 is to oppose the planned society, as the cartoon Plandopolis tried to convince us.
I'm looking forward to showing you around Plandopolis today,
where we were told how great life would be under a centralized system.
No, not meat. It's not your birthday. The Global Food Council are doing a really good job of keeping food production going.
Directed by technology.
Switch off brain and go to work. With this many people around, I'm glad there's a mega computer in charge.
Despite the fact that our lives would be tightly controlled, including calorie restrictions.
Have you got your calorie card open on your smartphone?
Transportation restrictions.
I registered your visit with Slick Travel Corp the other day, so they've allotted you a journey time.
People have asked, what's so bad about Agenda 21? The founders believed in a separation of powers, but the modern-day framers worked through the United Nations, through bankers working with communist and collectivist systems, and through environmental groups who want to seize land and redirect it for the vision of a few who wish to rule from the top. It's taking away our free will. You know, the American way. To fight against Agenda 21 is to oppose the straitjacket being imposed upon us under global and environmental pretexts. I want you to think for a minute about the existing neighborhood and housing regulations people voluntarily sign up for when they move into different neighborhoods, how tall your grass can be, whether or not you can have a basketball court or a fishing boat or an RV in your front yard, or in many cases even in your backyard. You've seen the news articles where people aren't allowed to grow gardens gardens in many areas. That is nothing compared to what's coming. If you followed the cap and trade laws that they tried to pass through Congress that were narrowly defeated only because there was a huge outcry, those thousands of pages were going to implement all kinds of new regulations on people's homes, on the kind of cars they can drive, on top of the already existing burdensome regulations. They were going to have housing inspectors, new rules on what kind of light bulbs you can have, and on and on. It was this endless laundry list. That's the kind of thing we're seeing happening under sustainable development. It's not sustainable at all. I can give you dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of quotes from leading globalists who say they want to destroy society. Mari Strong, one of the leading advocates for Agenda 21 and a speaker at the United Nations Rio Summit in 1992, said, "Isn't the only hope for the planet that the industrialized civilizations collapse? Isn't it our responsibility to bring that about?" A number of these environmental groups have said things to the same effect. They want to stop growth. That's what smart growth, so-called, is all about. It's not about new developments. It's about controlling and steering where humanity is allowed to go. They say they don't want there to be another United States in the developing world. They don't want other countries to be brought up to our living standards. They want to lower the United States living standards to a third world area, greatly reduce the population across the globe and here at home, and have more and more say in your life, what you're allowed to do on your own land, because it's now going to be rezoned under these sustainable development plans. And it's just like the things we've already seen in China. In fact, the workshop I was at in Elgin for these sustainable communities specifically talked about shop houses where they would have workers live in the same buildings they were working at. That's already going on in China, and it's nightmarish. You've heard about the Foxconn factory.
The answer to 1984 is 1776. You're listening to The Alex Jones Show.
Yeah, we're into, I don't know, hour number 9 now in the 48-hour broadcast, and the crew is a bit bleary-eyed, but they are kicking butt. We've got the crew split into 2. Hey, each crew only has to do 24 hours. That is a very easy very easy workload there. We are joined by the one, the only, for the next hour and 52 minutes, George Noory, who is nipping at Rush Limbaugh's heels. Not that we're against Rush Limbaugh overall. It's just that it's interesting that he's been the reigning king of talk radio here in the U.S. and worldwide for more than 20 years. And now here comes George Noory, overnights with Coast to Coast AM, which is a time where you've got generally about 10% of the regular audience, but he's almost got as many listeners as Rush Limbaugh now. Is fighting an uphill battle at night when there's about 10% of the listeners. He is still absolutely kicking butt because, well, he's got the courage to bring crazy people, some would say like me, on 9 years ago. Hard to believe. It's now been 9 years since George Noory first brought Alex Jones on the show. And, you know, of all the people that have helped Infowars.com, which was already reaching millions of people with the films and my little syndicated radio show, probably on 30-something stations when George first had me on, or a little more than that, to where we are today. If people ask who really gave you a break, it's George Noory. It is George Noory. Now in the last 5 years or so, Matt Drudge, the #1 sensation when it comes to internet news worldwide, he has really helped get us out as well. But George Noory and Matt Drudge, and of course, right in between that, overall, you, the listener, spreading the word. You're the reason we're able to do this and have now 10 reporters and 50-plus crew members and reaching 15 million people a week on internet and talk radio and through films. George reaches 16 to 20 million a week just on terrestrial radio and tens of millions overall every month on the internet. And it is just such an honor that he would spend an hour and a half or so with us tonight. And he said, hey, I want to take calls, Alex. So coming up in about 30, 40 minutes, we'll give the number out and take your calls on any subject. I said, what do you want to cover? And he said, hey, everything. He goes, I'm concerned about this prepper confirmed to be banned to fly because he criticized the NDAA. This is the new, that's how they did that with Jews in Germany. They said, well, you criticize the government, you can't have a business or travel. And we're going to get into Iran situation, the election, So much more with George Noory of coasttocoastam.com, where I'll be on with him in the first hour tonight, midnight to 1 a.m. Central, I guess 10 to 11 p.m. Pacific tonight at coasttocoastam.com, or just turn your AM or FM radio on and dial through. You can't miss it on close to 600 radio stations. George Noory, it is still, I pinch myself to have you here with us tonight. It's so amazing. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, my pleasure, Alex. I wanted to tell you a real funny Matt Drudge story. Matt and I are very close. And some time ago, he contacted me, sent me a little email, and said, "George, I got to get a hold of Alex. Can you get me his number?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." So I went to Tommy, my producer, and I said, "Look, I need you to get Alex's number over to Matt Drudge. I don't know what he wants, but he wants to talk to him." So I have noticed that a lot of your stories appear on the Drudge Report, and he's interested. You know, what's kind of funny, Alex, is what was conspiratorial years ago with things that you did and things that I did, they're beginning to become mainstream now. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, thanks to you. I mean, I'm not groveling. I only give credit where it's due. We were already growing, would have broken out, had some success, but I'm telling you, you were the nitrous oxide. You know, in the Road Warrior where they got the cars going 200, but then Humongous turns it on nitrous oxide and goes, boom! It's like George Noory was boom, and then Matt Drudge, boom, just like really sending us into the stratosphere. So thank you, my friend, because most people in media are egomaniacs. They're not like you and Drudge who really care about the information.
No, not at all. You're absolutely right about that. And I'm also in jubilation tonight because my Detroit Tigers, that's where I was born, they're going to the World Series. They beat the Yankees 4-0. And, of course, as you know, Alex, I spend a lot of time between St. Louis and L.A., my other place, and St. Louis is almost World Series bound. You know, so I may have a chance to see both teams in the World Series.
Talk about a dream come true, rooting for teams for your whole life, and now both of them could be up against each other.
Yep, absolutely. Now, who would I pick? Well, you got to pick Detroit because it's a boy thing. My son was born in St. Louis. He's going to pick the Cardinals, so we'll see what happens.
Very, very exciting. George, wow, where should we start tonight with the hundreds of incredible topics out there?
Why don't we talk a little bit about the Iranian situation?
Yeah, that's getting wild.
You know, I've had Jerry Corsi on the show for at least a year and a half, where we have talked about the Iranian situation, and both of us felt that there'd be some kind of military conflict against Iran about a year and a half ago. It hasn't happened yet. I think it's getting close. My prediction is something's going to happen after the election. I do not believe that the powers that be want anything to get involved with the election one way or another. I think they're a little confused over what candidate would benefit from some kind of military intervention in Iran. But I think something's going to happen. We have seen Iranian hackers attacking the bank system successfully, shutting down websites and things like that. And that's just what we know. We don't know what we don't know. But I just have this gut feeling, Alex, that something is going to happen. It's going to be very, very soon, and all hell could break loose. Let's hope to God it's not as bad as I think it could be. But I think something's going to happen, you know, and it's a double-edged sword. There's a problem here. There's no question that Iran is working on nuclear weaponry along with their nuclear program. I mean, they're doing that. So you have to be concerned over a nation like that spouts the kind of rhetoric and hatred that they have toward Americans.
Well, just to interrupt, which you know I'm the king of, that's it. You know I'm anti-war.
Yes,
and I don't try to take sides in all this, but I mean, the Iranian president every week says, and I went and looked at the translation, he's saying it, we're going to blow Israel off the map. You got a country like Israel with all these nukes, Iran's getting nukes, they wanted to be able to deploy them, and then they're saying, I'm going to nuke you. It's like some guy that weighs, 50 pounds threatening the UFC champion. Why is Iran asking for it? Because I don't want this war. I don't want $10 a gallon gas. But why is Iran just asking for it?
These people are insane. I've got a lot of friends who were Iranians who came here after the Shah of Iran situation, who, by the way, was no Boy Scout, and we can talk about that a little bit later on. But I've got one source who has told me weeks before anything happens in Iran, and I've had it on Coast to Coast. He'll say, look, people are upset. The valuation of our rial is going to go down. That's their currency. And sure enough, a week or two later, it goes down. He's been spot on. He said the people in Iran love the United States overall. He said, we want that kind of government. We want to live that way. We buy blue jeans. We buy cell phones. We like that style. It's the mullahs, these insane people who are out there spouting this hatred, spouting this rhetoric. I mean, you know, we've got nukes, and yes, we used them during World War II, and we stopped the war. We can argue whether it was right or wrong to use it. But I haven't heard the United States threaten to use nukes against any other country ever since. Even in the Cold War during the Soviet Union back in the 60s. I mean, we didn't say, we're going to launch against you. I mean, the Iranians, the government, talks in terms of using this stuff. Well, you know, when you have a neighbor that says, we're going to blow you off the map, we want a regime change, we want you gone.
Oh, listen, if I had a neighbor that got in my face and said, I'm going to kick your butt, and then he was menacing me with an axe, I'd kick his ass.
You'd have to do something. You could be living right next to him. You know, he could peer over his fence all the time, like tool time. You just can't let that happen. When you weigh all that, I have got to assume that there's going to be some kind of conflict to take out.
But Iran, like I said, I mean, Israel is an absolutely armed camp. It's got the United States backing it up. Why is Iran playing into that? I mean, I don't want this war. I'm not against Iran. Like you said, polls show 70+% of Iranians love America and hate the mullahs. So, you know, a lot of people in our government don't want to attack Iran either. They think it could. I mean, it's just horrible that this could happen.
I think what they've been hoping is an Arab Spring by bringing the Iranian economy down so far that the people would just go ballistic and would do what they had to do. But they can't do that. The mullahs are too strong. They're too entrenched with their Revolutionary Guard. Those people are not going to give up oil, money, power that easily. And they're going to hang in there for as long as they can. I mean, look at Assad in Syria, holding on as long as he can, butchering his own people. And they don't have those kind of resources. Syria is not an oil-rich nation. The Iranians are rich, they're powerful, and the 70-some people who are controlling the destiny of that country don't want to give it up.
And on the other side, George, we've got the West sending in a bunch of Saudi Arabian jihadis against Syria. I mean, it runs from bad to worse, and it's all coming to a head. What do you make of Joseph Stiglitz in the Washington Post today, former head of the World Bank, as the economist there, head World Bank economist, Nobel Prize winner, saying Europe's in a depression, it's spreading worldwide. Where do you see that going? Because here you are 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago talking about it, being criticized, I'm being criticized, Gerald Celente, so many others, and now everything on the news sounds like something we would have been covering, but I'm not waiting for some award or a pat on the back for being right. Instead, we still get criticized, but it's all coming true.
It's all coming true. I mean, if you and I had a crystal ball years ago and we were able to look into the future, Alex, we are looking exactly at what we had seen. We knew this. We predicted this. We talked about it. We both had specialized guests on the air talking about the things that would happen, and it's all coming true. I mean, I don't like the fact that it's happening, but it's happening. And the name of the game is control. You know, when Zygmunt Brzezinski said about a year and a half ago that they, being us, are becoming more aware of what the plan is, we have to act and act fast. We have to do this quickly. And that's what they're doing. They are operating and working as if they are running out of time. And you know what? I think they are. And so that's why they're pushing all these agendas so fast. The one thing they never anticipated, they didn't expect people to push back. And that's what's beginning to happen. And it's happening in all walks of life. And people are fed up. You can feel it. You can talk to your friends, your neighbors. They just don't feel comfortable anymore, and they're pushing back. And I think that pushback is healthy because that is what's going to keep people in line eventually. That's what's going to keep these world government leaders to realize that they just can't do that to people.
George, what type of pushback should the people be engaged in?
Well, you know, I was in the Navy 9 years, Alex, and I'm not an advocate of any kind of conflict, but you've got to protest. You've got to do what you can do in the voting booth, even though, you know, the old adage is, you know, it doesn't matter, every candidate's the same, or they'll change eventually. Violence is not a way to get it done. You have to protect yourself. I'm a guns rights activist. I'm a concealed weapons permit holder. You do that for safety purposes. You don't do that for aggressive purposes. But you've just got to continue to tell your friends, tell your family members what is going on, and hopefully that this mission that we've all been on for these years will continue to grow. I mean, years ago, people didn't believe us when we talked about things like that. They thought we were nuts. They don't think that anymore. I mean, now the camp that we're in is getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
But with great power comes great responsibility, and that's what's so frustrating, is trying to figure out all the angles when even the power structure isn't in control. It's an amazing thing to see, but I've studied, as you have, other countries, and whether it was the Nazis or the Communist Chinese or the Russians or Pol Pot or any of them, fascist, communist, authoritarian, doesn't matter, all basically the same thing, different flavors of the same thing, the same end result, total tyranny, a bunch of crooks taking control. The fact that our founders did put that Second Amendment in there, it slows down the riots, it slows down the corruption, it's a checkmate against tyranny. That is such a bulwark, even in a collapse, basically like bulkhead doors or floodgates. The term, I guess, would be, what do you call it, firewalls. That Second Amendment is just so important and is such a wild card.
Oh, it is important. It is important that people know that this is an armed society, and this is a society that will protect itself if need be. Look, I happen to feel very safe in a state that I know has approved concealed carry, because you just never know. But if you're in a state like Illinois, for example, where you can't carry, you know what? If I was a criminal, I'd say 9 out of 10 times I'm going to come up to someone and they're not going to have a gun. They're not going to have a gun legally because they're law-abiding people. I'm going to rob them. I'm going to do whatever I have to do. That's why crime is so bad in those states. You know, the FBI released statistics today that for the first time in 20 years, crime has gone up. What's happening to this society, Alex?
We're going into a controlled depression. What do you expect to happen, George, from all the different guests and experts you talk to in the next 6 months to a year?
Well, if you listen to people like Gerald Celente, and he's been on your program as well as mine, you know, we're at the cusp of collapse. I'm not sure it's that bad. I still think that these fiat money people are going to prop up this economy for several years. We're going to get hit with some downturns, but they're going to keep printing money. The problem, Alex, is eventually your kids and my kids or my grandchildren, they're going to pay the piper. That's where it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad 5, 10, 15 years out from now. We may get by over the next couple of years with these ups and these downs. I mean, if gasoline prices ever get back to anything that was respectable, you know, auto sales will pick up even higher than they've been going lately. But I'm more concerned about the future of your kids, the future of mine, and what's going to happen to them. You know, it's like a race. You know, when you're in a 4-person race and you're in a team and you hand the baton off to the guy when you come around the circle and he runs, you want to give him a pretty darn good head start, because that'll help ensure some victory. Well, we're not passing the baton off to our people, to our young people. We're not giving them that head start anymore, Alex. If anything, we're giving them laps and laps behind the leaders. And they're not going to have that opportunity that you and I have had over these years. You know, my son got a degree in criminal justice. He was not able to use it in that chosen field. He ended up working as a casino host in St. Louis. He got transferred to Vegas. He didn't like it. He felt that they bait and switched him. He moved back to St. Louis. I'm helping him out there. You know, people are looking for work. I get emails every day from listeners. Every day. Can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? Can you do this for you know, can you find me a job? I mean, it's amazing what's going on in society. One of the things I'm going to do, because I think it's gotten so bad out there, is I'm working on a project which I cannot announce yet, but I will with you when the time comes. And I'm going to set up a foundation and help our coast-to-coast listeners who are financially stressed. The show has been very good to me, and I'm going to set this up at the time that we start rolling along with this project that I'll announce hopefully within 30 days. And if any coast-to-coast listeners or even InfoWar listeners are in serious trouble and they need some money for utilities and things like that, we're going to help them out. I did that with our book sales, and, you know, we didn't give out a lot of money because we didn't get a lot of requests, but I think we're at a point now where people need help, and we're going to do it. It's the honor system. I'm going to have my producer, Tom, handle it for me. And you know what? We could get burned once in a while with someone who just wants to put a few $100 in their pocket, but so be it. It's well worth a chance.
Well, that's what it's all about. We've got to be all in. And George, you told me about some of your plans. They're just simply amazing. But this is a planned implosion. And if we don't try to take care of each other, if we don't promote people that promote liberty, if we don't stand up for what we believe in, we're going to lose it all. Because the ruling class is so disconnected from reality. I want to give the number out because in about 3 to 4 minutes, we're going to go to a quick news report and then come back. For folks that want to call into the show and talk to the great George Noory here during this 48-hour special transmission, the number to join us on air is 877-789-ALEX. That's our own little studio line, different than the regular radio show. 877-789-ALEX or 877-789-2539 on any subject or topic you want to raise for George Noory. But George, if the establishment, because most people that are successful, they actually built a product or wrote a book or have something that people are interested in, and it's through free association. But these globalists brag they're about monopolies that government can give them. They're monopoly capitalist. They're monopoly men. They're mafia, basically. And they're public about it. They think they're going to organize and control and ride this tiger of economic collapse. But historically, every elite thinks that because they're living in these armored redoubts and, feel insulated. I mean, I am genuinely, have moved to the country. I have genuinely put in solar. I have genuinely drilled a well. I have genuinely bought guns and food. I mean, I really believe there's a good chance I'm going to need to use that. And, I mean, it was a 20% chance 5 years ago, and then it was a 50% chance a year ago, and now it's more and more a realization it's going to happen. And it's just disgusting that we've come to this point. And again, you talk about your listeners saying, hey, I need a job. I've got family that have multiple degrees, some of them top of their class, veterans, you name it, who are out there beating the pavement, and they can't get any job but, $10, $12 an hour. And, I mean, how did America get to this? I mean, how did we get to this point, George? And where is it going? I mean, it is humiliating to know that family I have who are amazingly smart, good people. I mean, a lot of my family now work at gas stations or now work at daycare centers or now work, as field hands, with cattle or whatever. These are people with 2 degrees. These are veterans. These are Army officers. These are, this is not the way America was supposed to be.
Greed got us there, Alex, when it was cheaper to send your products out to get made to China or Mexico or Indonesia. Cheaper to make it out there, cheaper to ship it all back into the country and not use U.S. labor to do that. That's when it started to happen. and it was a systematic plan to increase shareholder value for most of these companies. Hey, you know what? I'm all for profit. I'm all for profit. I think if you're running a business, you need to make a profit. But at what point do you say, this is not right? So I'm going to lower my profit, but I'm going to employ more Americans. I'm going to keep people working. I'm going to do the old Henry Ford routine, and that simply was, you know what? You're working for me, support us, buy our goods, and let's push this product, let's push this company, and let's get going. Well, they didn't do that. Instead, they all decided to go to China, and that's what has hurt us. And until we get to a point where we can be competitive again, truly competitive in the marketplace, it's not going to come back.
Well, that's it. Look, when a few companies will sell out, they become the lowest common denominator in the equation. They force everybody else to go there, and there's always somebody more corrupt that'll do, you know, paying off Chinese generals to have slave labor, whatever it takes. And they go, well, that's free market. We're competing. It's not free market when the Chinese have their kids tied up on lamp poles outside the factory and their suicide nets, and they're doing forced abortions inside the factory, as mainstream news has reported. This is science fiction dehumanization we're dealing with a bunch of corporations battling for market share and control like it's a military operation, and that's what's done this to us. Would you slit your daughter's throat if it made you, you know, all-powerful in a particular industry? And that's really what it is a bunch of short-sighted corporate leaders, and Congress hasn't protected us. They were bought and paid for. If they had basic controls that made sure there was a level playing field instead of this slanted playing field that has us all going down the drain, we wouldn't be in this position. And again, I say to the elite, who are you going to be once you've destroyed this productive country that was the source of your power? But as you said, they're short term.
Exactly, exactly. My daughter, who you've been so kind to put up on your website, has this little jewelry company. And she's got two little girls, and these little girls said, Mommy, we want to make this jewelry. We want to do one of these. So as a mother, she said, have some fun, make this little necklace and do it. But it was hilarious because the way it looked, I said to her, you are using little children to make these products? And, you know, and she started laughing. But that's what they do in all these other countries. You know, they're using that kind of labor, that minimal cost labor, to generate products and things like that. And it's abominable. I mean, I wish I had the answer. I wish I had, you know, that special answer to get this thing solved and done. Both presidential Maine candidates, you know what, they all try. You know, Alex, you know where I come from. I think most of these people are nice people, well-intentioned, and want to do the best job they think they can. But, of course, for their own special interest groups, they get in the way, and everything goes, you know, to H in a basket. But I don't think they have the answers for this. I mean, I think this is one of the most difficult things in the world to solve. And, you know, just coming in for 4 years or 8 years is not going to solve a problem that has been going on for a long, long time. All they want to do is minimize it, make it look good until they get in and out of office and they're out of there. And, you know, hand the baton off to the next guy or women and let them worry about it.
Hey, by the way, George, I got to stop you right now. Your daughter is a sponsor of Infowars.com. And if you go to Infowars.com, about a third of the way down or halfway down, there's a jewelry ad. And I didn't tell anybody at the office because, you know, the guys running the show, they don't know what's going on in sales, that your daughter was a sponsor, a small sponsor, but she's been a good sponsor for about 2 years or so. And I clicked on it, and Chris, who's in there running the board and the cameras, because we're also streaming video, said, hey, I love that site. I bought jewelry for my wife, and now she just absolutely loves it. He was just saying this in my ear while you were talking, so... No, he didn't even know it was your daughter. It's just funny that he bought some. It's tuliptopia-jewelry.com.
She's one of a kind, little entrepreneur that she is.
Hey, that's what it's all about. And then it creates this incredible industry in the country, instead globalism. Look, it's not bad to go in a box store and buy something if you buy something that's also original. But it's when everything is a box store and everything's from China. Hey, folks, you know, it's not a good deal. We're going to go to break and play one of these special reports. We've got like 50 of these. Which one are we going to here for break before we go to calls? Okay, it's John Baum with his report on mass shootings. We're going to get to that with John Baum. Just happens to be the guy in there running the board. And then we're going to come back in just a few minutes with George Noory and your phone calls. Anthony, Michael, John, Stuart, Kenneth, Mark, Joshua, was that Ramses? Can't pronounce these names. And there's no women there. Hey, women, you need to get involved with us here on air. We don't screen your calls, but see like 10 other men after that. Let's hear from some women out there. 877-789-ALEX, 877-789-2539. We're going to go to break and come back. Briefly, we're here for the money bomb so I can, hey, it makes the globalists mad that I freely ask for money once a year. It's listeners' ideas, and it helped us buy more equipment. We want to buy some satellite uplink stuff and some file sharing systems and some subscriptions to put vignettes out for TV, not just radio. This stuff's expensive. I've tried to go on the cheaps, and it's an endless nightmare, so we've got to buy $100,000 pieces of equipment. Sounds like a lot. That's the cheap end of pro stuff. I know George knows about that. He's got a couple of national TV awards. What do they call those? Emmys, yeah. He's got quite a few of those from TV news. The point is, we're free market. We're not coming with a gun, taking your money like government. We're just here saying if you support us, InfoWarsMoneyBomb.com. I want to thank all of you that have been donating, and you can donate at InfoWarsMoneyBomb.com and get like one-of-a-kind camouflage T-shirts that say Liberty or Death, Money Bomb 2012, Infowars.com on the back, a lot of other items at InfoWarsMoneyBomb.com. And the crew is here to take your calls and to take your donations. And I just want to thank you, because it's so amazing to see people supporting us. 5 years ago, as we go to break, I did not want to support the Money Bomb. Listeners started one with links to our PayPal area, and I said, I'm not going to promote it, but it got so big I did, and that extra money helped us move into a bigger office. We've expanded since then, and now we've gone from about 10 crew members to about 52, right at 52 crew and contractors, and we're reaching not $3 million a week, but about $15 million a week, one way or the other. So you can subscribe at prisonplanet.tv to support us. You can buy books, videos, water filters discounted, InfoWarsShop.com, or go to InfoWarsMoneyBomb.com. I've been on air quite a bit today. InfoWarsMoneyBomb.com, and donate right there. And it's your free gift. It's your decision. It's your movement towards a liberty and voting with your dollars. And I want to thank George Noory for spending time with us tonight. We're going to go to break, come back with your phone calls and a lot more with the one, the only George Noory. I'm Alex Jones. Stay with us.